Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee. The first item on the agenda is membership of the committee. So it's receiving apologies for absence. I don't think any members are absent. And I understand that Councillor Firth is substituting for the vacancy. Is that correct? Thank you. Item 2 is the election of chair for the meeting. Could I have nominations for chair for the meeting, please? Thank you, Councillor Sokol. That was Councillor Eric Firth moved. Is that seconded? I'll second it. Councillor Pattison seconded. All those in favour, please? Against? Abstain? Thank you. That's carried, Councillor Firth.
Item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting. Can I sign those and approve those as to a record? Thank you. Item 4, the declarations of interest and lobbying. I'll go around colleagues. I personally haven't been lobbied. Councillor Sokol?
None, Chair.
Councillor Crook?
None, Chair.
Councillor Pattison?
None, Chair.
Councillor Pinnock?
None, Chair.
Councillor Thompson?
None, Chair.
And Councillor Armour?
None, sir.
Thank you. Item 5, admission of the public. They're here. Item 6, public question time.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Item 7, deputations and petitions.
No deputations or petitions, Chair.
So we go to number 8, planning applications. The first item on the agenda is 2023/92191 for the erection of 62 dwellings at Cliff Hill, Denbydale, Huddersfield, HC8. Victor?
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. This is an application for a residential development of 62 dwellings at the largest part of the HS 144 site, which is allocated for residential development in the local plan. This application has been brought to committee due to the number of representations received. It follows a previous application for a development of 48 dwellings at this site, which was considered by the Heavy Woolen Planning Subcommittee last year and was refused for 7 reasons, which I will come back to. In this slide, the plan on the right-hand side shows in orange the site allocation, HS 144, and then within that, A represents the current application site, and members can see that it covers the larger part of the site allocation, as well as 2 slithers of land along the Cumberworth Lane frontage. B is a separate site that has planning permission for 10 dwellings. C also has had a separate planning permission granted and has actually been developed. 6 dwellings have been built there in a cul-de-sac known as Springhead Gardens. And then finally, D is the last part of the site allocation for which no planning permissions have been granted. The application site is approximately 1.9 hectares in size. It slopes downhill from north to south towards the centre of Denbydale. It's a greenfield site. It's currently grassed agricultural land with some trees and hedgerows. The surrounding land is in agricultural and residential use. The green belt and a public footpath border the site to the north, and to the west, shown here on this plan, is the Grade 2 listed Wesleyan Methodist Church, which members saw today. The site is visible in the wider landscape. On this slide, we see in the top image the view from Barnsley Road on the opposite side of Denbydale, overlooking another allocated site. And members, hopefully that is large enough for you to pick out the Wesleyan Methodist Church. And the site that we're looking at today is to the right of the Wesleyan Methodist Church. In that slide, in that image, the upper image, you can also see the Springhead Gardens development. That was C the area marked as C in that earlier slide. And then the lower image, members will recall that from the site visit this morning. We did stop on Barnsley Road to look across Denbydale at this view, and again, perhaps more clearly in that view, you can see the Wesleyan Methodist Church. That's the view across the Churchfield open space, and also in that image on the left-hand side, you can see the East Hill Way development that members you also saw this morning on the site visit. These are views of the west end of the site, showing Cumberworth Lane, the site's frontage to the road, and the Wesleyan Methodist Church. Again, the committee site visit bus stopped just here outside the site where the site entrance is proposed, which I'll come back to in a minute. And then in these images, clockwise from the top left, first we see a view of the track to the north of the application site where it meets Cumberworth Lane. This track carries a public footpath north-eastwards towards Leek Hall Lane. Then top right, we have a view looking south into the site from the public footpath. Then bottom right is the TPO protected oak tree that exists within the site. And then finally, bottom left is a view from the public footpath looking south across the area that was annotated as D in the earlier slide. Members can see on the left-hand side the last house on Leek Hall Crescent, visible there, and members will recall that the committee site visit bus stopped outside that house as well. These four images show existing dwellings adjacent to the application site. The top two images show dwellings that were mentioned or referred to in the previous reasons for refusal. Crook Cottage is a single-storey dwelling to the south of the application site. And then you also see there the dwellings of Springhead Gardens. That's the 6-dwelling cul-de-sac recent development, which is located to the southeast of the application site. Then we see bottom left the dwellings on Chapel Court that are that are located to the southwest of the application site and are accessed from Cumberworth Lane. And then in the bottom right image, we see dwellings that are accessed via the track to the north of the application site. Those have a Cumberworth Lane address. Shown here is the applicant's topographic survey, which illustrates how the slope sites downhill, albeit with a mound towards the centre of the site close to the public footpath. And then, as mentioned earlier, there was a previous application refused last year for a development of 48 dwellings at this site. This slide summarises the 7 reasons why that previous application was refused last year. Paragraph 5.1 of the committee report briefly summarises the key changes made by the applicant to address these 7 reasons for refusal. And obviously, members, there's a lot more commentary in the rest of the committee report following that paragraph. So for the current application, the applicant's proposed layout is shown here. A single vehicular point of access is proposed from Cumberworth Lane, from which an estate road would extend into the site, splitting into 2 arms in response to the site's topography. At the end of each arm, pedestrian connections to the adjacent public footpath to the north are proposed. A mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced properties is proposed. They would comprise 3 1-beds, 12 2-beds, 24 3-beds and 23 4-bedroom units. Publicly accessible open spaces are proposed around the site's TPO protected tree. You could probably, yes, hopefully you can see the dotted red line surrounding that TPO protected tree. And also open spaces proposed above the surface water attenuation tank at the east end of the site and also either side of the proposed site entrance. Members, I'll just point out as well 3 crosses on that site, 3 red crosses that denote the locations of the mine entries that exist beneath this site, which I will come back to. This slide shows a sample of the 10 house types proposed by the applicant. 2-storey dwellings are proposed across the site, although 8 units would have 3-storey rear elevations due to the site's topography. Pitched roofs are proposed across the site. The majority of dwellings would be built of artificial stone. However, 4 dwellings at the west end of the site, nearest to the listed building, would be of natural stone. The proposed site entrance, shown here, would have new footways either side of it, facilitating safer movement for pedestrians along this part of Cumberworth Lane, where there is currently no footway. Taking into account traffic speeds outside the application site, the visibility displays proposed either side of the site entrance are considered adequate. Highways Development Management officers are satisfied with these proposals in terms of highway safety. Officers of that team have also advised that the proposed internal layout and resident and visitor parking is now acceptable, including in relation to waste collection. So, regarding the 2 previous reasons for refusal which related to overlooking of neighbouring dwellings, the applicant has moved the relevant dwellings away from those neighbours in these proposals and has submitted these drawings illustrating the proposed relationships between proposed and existing dwellings. This slide relates to the same matter. With regard to Crook Cottage, the applicant has highlighted that topography and intervening boundary treatments would prevent overlooking of the rear windows of that single-storey dwelling adjacent to the application site, despite less than the expected 21-metre distance being maintained between the relevant elevations. This slide illustrates the appropriate locations proposed for the development's 12 affordable housing units, shown here at the end of the arms of the estate road and also at the site entrance. And this slide breaks down the unit size mix of the proposed affordable housing, the tenure split of which is considered acceptable. Now, the unit size mix of the 7 affordable rent units is compliant with the expectations of the Council's Affordable Housing and Housing Mix SPD. Those are highlighted in green in the 3rd column. The intermediate element is not compliant. That's where text is highlighted in red here. However, at the Council's Strategic Housing team have advised that this mix can be accepted at this site. Now, members, I need to spend some time explaining the site's coal mining legacy and the applicant's proposals regarding site remediation. Members will be aware that strong concerns have been raised regarding this aspect of the proposals in representations received from local residents, the Upper Dearne Valley Environmental Trust and Councillor Tim Bamford. Most of the site is within the development high-risk area as defined by the Coal Authority. It is known to have historic mine workings beneath its surface, like many sites in the borough, including those 3 mine entries which are pointed out, denoted by red crosses in that plan shown earlier. Under the previous refused application, the applicant proposed extensive extraction of coal from the site, described as being tantamount to open cast mining. The previous committee report referred to the extraction of 12,000 tonnes of coal from the application site. This matter was included in the Council's previous reasons for refusal, with concern being expressed regarding the environmental impact of such large-scale extraction at this site. Under the current application, different proposals have been set out in relation to remediating the site and making it stable. Paragraph 10.144 of the committee report provides more detail of the proposals, but in summary, the applicant now proposes grouting to fill the voids beneath the site and capping of the site's 3 mine entries. The applicant has also stated that extraction may still be carried out towards the centre of the site in the area shown green here in this slide to deal with the voids located close to the surface of the site and where coal remains close to the surface. Members will be aware that for safety reasons, coal, which obviously is a combustible material, can't be left close to the surface in sites being developed for residential use. Now, the applicant hasn't been and can't be precise about the amount of material that may need to be removed from the site as part of the proposed development. And members, I will call it material because it may not only be coal; it may be a mix of coal, soil, sandstone, clay, and shale. But the applicant has said that approximately 4,150 cubic metres of material may need to be removed. This amount is not considered unusual for a development of this size and nature at a sloped site where there are existing voids and seams near to the proposed surface level. Achieving appropriate road gradients also usually necessitates excavation and changes to levels at such sites. However, residents' concerns regarding the potential impacts of that extraction are valid, and an appropriate condition is therefore recommended, requiring the submission of detailed information quantifying any such extraction, should it be necessary, demonstrating the need for it as opposed to the reuse of it on site, reuse of the material on site, explaining how it has been minimised, how the extraction has been minimised, that is, and explaining how the impacts of that extraction would be mitigated. And then one final point to note regarding site remediation and stability. On Monday, the Coal Authority withdrew their objection to the application, subject to conditions which are recommended in the committee update of yesterday. Regarding other considerations relevant to this application, drainage and flood risk have been raised as key concerns in many of the representations received from local residents. However, the lead local flood authority has advised that the proposals are now acceptable as downstream improvements to the relevant watercourse have been carried out and acceptable on-site attenuation and an acceptable discharge rate have been proposed by the applicant. Environmental health officers now consider the proposals acceptable in relation to site contamination, noise, dust and other environmental impacts subject to conditions. The site's TPO protected oak tree would be retained and worked around in the proposed layout. In updated comments received yesterday, the Council's ecologists confirmed that the applicant's biodiversity net gain calculation is correct, and members will note that the securing of a financial contribution regarding that matter is recommended. Regarding that matter and more widely the Section 106 agreement, the required Section 106 agreement, under this application the applicant initially submitted financial viability information in support of a claim that the proposed development could not provide any affordable housing or Section 106 contributions. However, the Council's consultants reviewed that information and concluded that the development could in fact provide the required 12 affordable housing units and Section 106 contributions. The applicant decided not to contest this, and the full complement of necessary obligations is recommended in the committee report. A further representation from 2 local residents was received yesterday, objecting to the application on highways and drainage grounds and stating that local residents should have had further opportunity to comment on the application in light of submissions made during its life. This representation was in addition to the 52 representations, all objections that were previously received and that have been summarised in the committee report. Significant amendments have been made following the previous refusal of planning permission and also during the life of the current application to ensure that the relevant planning concerns have been addressed. The proposed development relates to a site allocated for housing and would contribute to housing delivery in the borough, which members will know is a key consideration, not least given the tilted planning balance now applicable in light of the borough's current housing supply situation. Approval of full planning permission is recommended subject to conditions, including the 2 conditions requested by the Coal Authority listed in yesterday's committee update, and also subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victor. Could you just explain for the members of the public here what you mean by grouting, because I'm sure they don't understand what grouting is.
Yes, Chair. Grouting is a solution used by developers or landowners, any party wanting to stabilise land which is known to have voids beneath it, usually coal mining or other mining voids, mineral extraction voids, and it involves pumping a substance similar to concrete into the voids beneath the site, allowing it to set hard, which then stabilises the site and enables development at surface level without concerns or overrides concerns or deals with concerns regarding potential collapse of the site.
Thank you. Speakers, can I call Dominic Cumming?
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair, Councillors. I'd like to talk about site access and road safety matters, in particular picking up on some points in both Mr Darwin and Mr Grayson reports. Mr Darwin states that Conworth Lane near the proposed access is sufficient to allow a HGV and light vehicle to pass. However, what he's not saying is there is insufficient room to allow 2 HGVs or large vehicles to pass at that point. This is especially true at the pinch point on the bend by the Methodist Church. Furthermore, there are often parked vehicles outside Chapel Court opposite the church and at the side of the White Hart pub, which effectively restrict the road down to single carriageway. These also restrict the visibility display lines, compromising safe access into and out of the proposed site. Commonwealth Lane is bus lane, a designated route for HGV quarry lorries from Peacewood Quarry, and a route used by HGVs with 60-foot trailers. The applicant's own speed summary for proposed site access has over a third of weekday traffic movements exceeding the speed limit in one direction going north, and over half exceeding the speed limit in the other direction coming south. Although Mr Darwin states there is sufficient space for RCVs to turn into the development, he has failed to consider the turning room needed for construction traffic, towing trailers laden with heavy equipment, diggers and building material. These vehicles notoriously need a much wider turning space and will encroach into the opposite carriageway and very likely onto the existing narrow footpath opposite the proposed entrance. Later in his report, he admits that no details of the construction access strategy are available. My question is, why is this not available? Surely this is critical information for the statutory consultees to assess and to this committee's decision-making process in ensuring the health and safety of all road users and pedestrian safety. This is just one more example of the information black hole in this unfit for purpose planning application, which also contains over 42 conditions, which means there is insufficient details provided by the applicant to allow this application to be approved. The proposed new footpaths, one 2 metres wide and the other 1.5, not 2 as claimed, are unsafe. The road is so narrow at this point that HGVs have to travel with their tyres in the gutter, meaning serious health and safety risk of their large wing mirrors striking pedestrians as they use these 2 new footpaths. The safety audit for this site access has been so cursory and lacking in sufficient data as to be inadmissible. Only 2 brief half-hour observations out of peak hours were undertaken. We totally refute the traffic assessment claims that the traffic generated by this junction will have no material or severe impact. The computerised modelling is deeply flawed, as pointed out in Upper Durham Valley comprehensive reports. The proposal for a traffic plan itself recognises that the development will generate a significant volume of traffic. 62 houses will increase traffic movements at this blind bend by approximately 248 cars per day, assuming just 1 return journey per vehicle. We consider this site access contravenes paragraphs 114B and 115 of the MPPF, so did HM Inspector of Planning. In my opinion, as a local resident, this is an accident waiting to happen. Somebody's going to get killed or seriously injured as a result of this site access due to a road traffic accident. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, councillors, good afternoon. I'm a resident of Springhead Gardens, which borders the site to the south, as you've seen, and I'm also a commercial litigation solicitor. This application is fatally flawed. It is well documented that during the local plan hearings in 2018, the planning inspector insisted that access to the site must be off Leek Hall Lane due to the safety issues we've seen with Cumberworth Lane. The inspector's report to the council included modifications to be made so the plan was sound and legally compliant. And it says, the council indicated that access may be facilitated via Leek Hall Lane. Subject to this modification, the allocation is soundly based. This is confirmed in the plan, which states the provision of a pedestrian footway is required across the site frontage at Leek Hall Lane. The Council's report on adoption of the plan confirms the inspector's recommendations are binding and must be included in the plan. And by law, planning applications must be determined in accordance with the local plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. This application with site access at Cumberworth Lane does not meet the local plan and so should be rejected. Mr Grayson, in his report, thinks the inability of the applicant to secure the parcel of land which connects the site to Leek Hall Lane is a material consideration and therefore the plan can be departed from. It is not a material consideration. A material consideration is concerned with land use in the public interest. Access was determined by the planning inspector based on the safety of the public. The applicant's commercial inconvenience does not change that fact or outweigh the safety of the community. I remind the committee that lack of a 5-year land supply or the likelihood of the applicant making an appeal if refused are also not material considerations despite the comments in Mr Grayson's report. I cannot conceive of a scenario where approval of this application would not be overturned at judicial review. I also point out that it is for the detailed planning process to determine the suitability for development of any local plan allocation. The allocation stage was a brief, high-level assessment and the starting point for more detailed investigations. It did not guarantee suitability of any site, and in this case, more detailed investigations have shown the site to be unsuitable for development, particularly due to the proposed coal mining activity. Despite the woeful lack of detail in their application, the applicant still says that coal extraction will be required. The last application was refused on that basis and should be refused again. The Coal Authority's response received this week talks to making the site safe for development. Crucially, it doesn't address the substantial risk of remediation causing damage to the existing homes standing close to the site. When the last application was refused, a committee member said they couldn't imagine any way in which this site could be developed. And I agree. I urge this committee to refuse the application.
Good afternoon, Chair, Councillors. I'm here representing the Upper Dearne Valley Environmental Trust. We are thoroughly opposed to this development on this geologically unstable site with a dangerous entrance, which contravenes agreements with Her Majesty's planning inspectors. I would let you know that I was a witness to what took place at the local planning hearings, being an active participant in all 4 stages of the inquiry. So I know what happened, I know what was agreed. We find it difficult to understand how this application passed at pre-app stage, never mind getting to this meeting. I'd like to just focus on a few quick things. You know, we have a very good highways and we have a very good home builders guide, SPDs. Well, this developer has not taken any notice of it whatsoever by the sounds of it and by the look of it. We're at least 15 parking spaces short. We've got narrow roads, garages are still too small and won't accommodate modern cars. And Mr. Grayson, if you sell us, we don't believe you because the RAC have been on this. Not only that, off-road parking looks extremely tight, even though you say you've extended it. You know, you're not going to get 2 cars parked side by side without neighbours banging each other's cars when they try to get out. We've only got 11 visitor parking spaces, not 16. The other 5 are on the road, just in the right place to obstruct RCVs. And I'll tell you now, an RCV driver will not pass parked vehicles on a narrow road. I know from experience, I live on one. And to be honest, the turning spaces, and particularly at the north end of the site, well, you'd need chitty chitty bang bang to get round those, and in fact they were expecting the RCV to reverse in a very narrow space between 2 parking spaces. The internal roads will be blocked and with parked cars, making it difficult to access for service and emergency vehicles. And then we have the 13-page letter from Landscapes. Basically, these people are very unhappy, and it actually contravenes, they want to start again basically. It contravenes LP 33, Green Street Principles, Kirklees Emerging Environmental Strategy, undertakings in our council plan document, which is just coming out, and paragraph 131 of the MPPF. The site plan is not a well-designed, beautiful place, and you were shown the wrong plan just earlier, councillors. I'll point that out to you. It is a cramped, overbearing, oppressive and unattractive design on a hillside and will be seen for miles around. The houses are too tall, the density inconsistent with that generally in the area, which is about 25 dwellings a hectare. The houses are built on shelves, huge retaining walls, some 10 to 13 feet. This site, I'm going to say, should be developed as a biodiversity nature park. That's what we need, and that's what this council should look at with the landowner. Thank you, Chair.
So, sorry, Chair, you didn't have your microphone on. So this is a statement from Councillor Bamford, who was one of the ward councillors. I have several comments I wish to make on this application. I am a transport manager and have many years of experience in heavy transport, many of them driving. Site access. The proposed access goes against the planning inspector's concerns about the safety of the site access being on Cumberworth Lane and the planning department's confirmation that the frontage would be on Leek Hall Road, which provided a much safer junction with Wakefield Road and avoided the centre of Denberdale. The planning inspector, Katie Child, accepted this site into the local plan on this basis. Cumberworth Lane at the proposed site entrance is very busy and quite narrow, especially by the Methodist Chapel, where 2 HGVs or buses cannot pass. This is also exacerbated by parked cars. There is a haulage company approximately 1 mile away on Coalpit Lane with a licence to operate 15 HGVs and 30 trailers. This company regularly uses this route, operating 44-tonne trucks. Cumberworth Lane is also the designated route for 32-tonne clay trucks from Peacewood Quarry to Naylor Clayware at Cawthorne, Barnsley. This is run on a campaign basis and can add hundreds of journeys per week over the campaign duration. Trucks of these weights need a longer stopping distance, especially in the wet, approaching the site from Lower Cumberworth as it is a steep downhill section of road. I also have concerns around the issue of getting an articulated vehicle into and out of the site without driving on pavements. The first of these vehicles will be very large, carrying plant and machinery to site. There are several sites in the area that aren't built out yet. The traffic from these developments will add yet more traffic to Cumberworth Lane. Accessing the site from Cumberworth Lane will be detrimental to the health and safety of Denberdale residents. Coal mining. It is noted that there will be around 4,150 metres cubed of coal extracted from site, which equates to 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The developer describes this as waste, but it is still coal extraction and should be licensed by the Coal Authority, who have substantive concern about the site. If the coal is classed as waste, will it be disposed of at landfill and recorded with waste transfer documents? How does this release of carbon fit with the Kirklees Climate Emergency Declaration? This is not environmentally acceptable as required by Para 223 of the MPPF. The developer doesn't seem to know how much material will be removed at this stage. Maybe a detailed site investigation report would remove this doubt. This could easily turn into the full-scale open cast operation that was refused previously. Without the intrusive site survey, how can the developer know how much grouting is required? This isn't a cheap exercise and could lead the developer into an untenable position financially. In conclusion, I am very worried that this supposedly detailed planning application has come forward with 42 conditions attached. I am particularly worried that the remediation strategy and the intrusive site survey, amongst many others, are secured by condition. They should have been presented in this application. This development has the potential to cause an environmental disaster for Denberdale by destabilising the site and releasing contamination and posing a flood risk. This site is extremely challenging and, in my opinion, not suitable for development, and planning permission should be refused.
Thank you, Sheila. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello, colleagues, and happy municipal year to you all. I want to support the comments that residents have made, both in writing and today at the committee. I'm speaking today on behalf of myself and Councillor McKirker, who's not able to be here today due to a working commitment. I want to speak specifically about one issue, which is my principal concern, on top of those raised by others, and that's the significant issue of simply conditioning a remediation strategy of the coal issue, as is currently the case in the application. What we saw through the last iteration of this application was essentially a profitable coal extraction operation, and that would have had potentially houses on it in the future, and that would have been a result of the remediation strategy. What we have in this iteration of the scheme is a big elephant in the room of what would actually happen to enable this development in the remediation of the land in dealing with the coal seams. And my worry is that the way that the remediation may be done could be worse for local residents, worse for air quality, worse for water pollution, the wider environmental impact, worse for transport movements than the proposals regarding the housing themselves, which residents have also, of course, raised their views about. It could well and probably will involve significant coal extraction again. How much? How will it be processed on site? What impact will that have on neighbouring properties? How will it be transported from the site and how often, taking what routes through the village? What impact will that have on the watercourse, on local air quality, on climate change and the local ecology? We simply don't know, because at the moment, if this application were to pass on the recommendations, the only requirement is that there is a remediation strategy and that it be implemented. Well, of course there will be, and there needs to be one, but it can't be and shouldn't be that you, as the decision makers, haven't had the opportunity to see it, to have it assessed and take proper advice on it. And it shouldn't be one that has a worse impact on the area than the things that you do have in front of you and can make an informed decision about. Right now, it might well be, and I believe it would be. We can't be certain that it won't be, because right now you're not looking at an environmental assessment or climate change assessment or air quality assessment or viability assessment or traffic assessment that takes account of that. This is a huge issue because it doesn't exist within the application or what you've got in front of you. It's just a potential condition. This is a huge issue and it isn't something that can be approved without having the plan and assessing it properly. For me, it's the biggest issue with this site and with this proposal. And in my view, it would be negligent and potentially dangerous to approve an application without having that information in front of you. I believe that you, as the committee, and my residents have the right to know and assess exactly what is going to happen before you have to make this decision, so that you can make an informed and safe decision on the future of the site and the impact it will have on residents' lives. So I'm asking you today for, in the least, a deferral, so that these issues can be addressed and proposals made by the applicant. That would mean what would be done to the remediation of the coal issue can be assessed, and then you, as the decision makers, can make an informed, fair and reasonable judgment that, if it were a rejection that you came to, could be upheld at the planning inspectorate, and if it were an approval, which I wish it were not, but if it were, you could at least be making a decision that you are confident in with the information that you need to make the best possible decision. So thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. My name is Will Marshall. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant Urban Group in support of the application. Firstly, this application is on a site which has been identified for housing within the local plan, and there is a strong need for additional homes within Denbydale and Kirklees as a whole. This is a material consideration. As members will be aware from the delegated officer's report, this application follows one refused last year. In that decision, the council cited 7 reasons for refusal, 5 of which were due to a lack of information. However, the principle of residential development was accepted. This new proposal should therefore be assessed against those previously given, with the question asked, does the development proposed overcome those previous reasons for refusal? With this in mind, the applicant has worked closely with officers of the council to gather additional supporting information and has revised the plans and layout so that the proposed development now addresses the reasons cited on the previous application. I'll now go through these in turn. Firstly, the applicant has provided updated land contamination reports and monitoring which demonstrate that remediation can take place without detrimental impacts on the neighbouring residents and the environment. This has been confirmed through the Environmental Health Officer's consultation response, which provides no objections subject to the recommended conditions. Regarding the second reason, there are now no longer proposals to work the site for coal as previously proposed, and therefore this no longer should be an issue, with any extraction being as minimal as possible and subject to further approval and scrutiny at conditions stage. Regarding the proposed density, an additional 14 dwellings are now proposed, which represents a density of 32.6 dwellings per hectare. It is acknowledged that this is just below the desired 35. However, it has been agreed with the planning officer that the proposals represent the highest level of development that can be practically achieved on the site, given the topography and other constraints. Regarding reasons 4 and 6, which both relate to residential amenity and overlooking, the amended layout has been designed specifically to avoid unacceptable impacts on Springhead Gardens and Crook Cottage, and this has been accepted by the planning officer in their report. Regarding reason 5, which stated that there was a lack of information regarding the internal access road, a full swept path analysis complete with visibility displays has been undertaken in order to demonstrate that vehicles, cyclists and pedestrians can safely traverse the site without conflict, and again, this has been accepted by officers. And finally, the last reason for refusal was due to a lack of financial contributions, including affordable housing, school places, biodiversity and open space. As per the officer's recommendation, this is now being addressed with over £420,000 worth of financial contributions plus 12 on-site affordable units. As such, it can be concluded that the proposed development you see before you today does in fact overcome the previous 7 reasons for refusal, and as this is an allocated housing site, and as the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, there is a clear presumption in favour of the application. Thank you.
May I ask for a little bit of clarity, Mr. Chairman, please? As I understand it, this is a completely new and separate planning application to any previous ones. And I understand that planning applications are decided on their own merits. So how much weight should we give to the claim that from a previous application, they've overcome the objections to that? What's the relevance to this application, sir?
Councillor Armour, before we go into that, because members will be asking those questions, all members I presume, can I ask officers to come back on the objectors' complaints?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I'll just start actually in answer to Councillor Armour's question about the relevance of the previous application. It is a different application. It's a more dense proposal. 62 units are now proposed rather than the 48 that were previously proposed. And yes, Councillor Armour, you're right. We do, in fact, any local planning authority needs to determine an application based on its merits. But there is also a requirement or an expectation placed on local planning authorities to be consistent in the decisions that they make. So the 7 reasons for refusal and the council's decision overall on the previous application is a material planning consideration that you will, as a committee, have to take into account and ask yourselves, well, if this wasn't an issue on the previous application, unless there are material circumstances that introduce new considerations, should we be now attaching weight to that issue, whatever it might be? That's why in situations like this, we do focus to an extent on addressing the previous reasons for refusal. But yeah, as I said, there is an expectation of consistent decision making. But of course, if you feel that new issues are now relevant, or if you feel that the fact that it is a 62 unit development rather than a 48 unit development, if that, in your view, introduces new issues that you feel are now more relevant to this application than were relevant to the previous application, you are free to take a different view on issues compared with the position taken by the Heavy Woolen Committee last year. Just on the coal mining, mineral extraction, site stability issues that have been raised, officer's recommendation is there to grant permission subject to a condition requiring full details of the extraction that may be necessary, and for details of how that will be minimised and how impacts will be mitigated. That condition is recommended. Members, if you're not satisfied with that, you are free to take a different view and to either defer the application with a request for more information to be submitted before this application comes back to committee. You are also free to refuse planning permission if you wish to. You, again, will need to be guided by government guidance and policy on these issues and ask yourselves whether or not that would be reasonable, whether or not a deferral would give you information that is crucial to the determination of this planning application. If you feel that it is necessary to have that information at this stage, then yeah, you are free to defer your decision if you wish to. On the site access issue, I was not present at the local plan hearings, so I can't verify exactly what was said at those hearings, but I can refer members to the local plan inspector's report of the 30th of January 2019 regarding this specific site. She said, at the hearing, the council indicated that access may be facilitated via Leak Hall Lane, and this should be clarified. Members, I don't see in that wording a requirement for vehicular access to be provided via Leak Hall Lane. Similarly, in the site allocation for this site, HS144, which was amended, that wording was amended following the recommendations of the local planning inspector. The constraints listed in that site allocation do include, and I'll read this out, the provision of a pedestrian footway is required across the site frontage at Leek Hall Lane. Again, I don't see a requirement in that wording for vehicular access to be provided from Leek Hall Lane. I don't see any prohibition of vehicular access being provided from Cumberworth Lane. It's possible that the term site frontage is being interpreted as an indication of a preference for vehicular access to be taken from that side of the site, but as I said, there's nothing in that wording that restricts or prohibits vehicular access from being taken from the other side of the site. Obviously subject to that site access being made safe, which, as I mentioned earlier, Highways Development Management officers are happy that it would be. Chair, if I may hand over to Highways colleagues to answer other Highways concerns.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. I was going to reiterate slightly the point you made. It is maybe made, access may be achievable from Leek Hall Lane. And yes, it may be, if you had that part of the frontage. This isn't the proposal that's been put forward by this developer. They've obviously acquired third-party land on Cumberworth Lane. They can now construct a compliant access on Cumberworth Lane by acquiring extra land to provide a footway along the frontage and to provide the necessary visibility for the vehicle speeds. They've demonstrated they can provide an access which is safe and suitable to accommodate this a development of this scale. In doing so, they are providing a footpath along the frontage Cumberworth Lane, which actually links from the site up to the footpath to the north and to the south. It makes a continuous footpath down into Denbydale Village. It can accommodate, the layout itself can accommodate service vehicles. The parking is considered to be adequate. It's been road safety audited. It's suitable for adoption. From a highway perspective, that access and layout is suitable to serve a development of this scale.
Would like a word.
Thank you, Chair. Members, just a point of clarification, if I may. I want to address the presumption in favour of sustainable development, otherwise known as the tilted balance, which is outlined in the report from paragraph 10.4 onwards. I just want to clarify that for the purposes of your decision making this afternoon, that is a material consideration in your weighing up the planning balance. The reason being that this test or presumption rather is found within the NPPF, which is itself a material consideration in your decision making, and that presumption in favour of sustainable development is triggered because this council does not have a 5-year housing land supply. So I hope that clarifies that point.
Members. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm the only person here who was on the previous committee which made that decision. I might be wrong, but the reasons for refusal, given there, seven is a lot of reasons. Normally you get a couple or three, maybe four. But there are some things that are not on there. There's nothing about traffic, for instance, and nothing about the highway network. So I think it would be difficult to introduce that at this stage. But I am concerned because I'm not convinced that the reasons for refusal have been overcome. Councillor Simpson was very eloquent in his comments on this, and I probably can't do the same justice to the issue as he did. But I'm a bit concerned about the coal. The thing is, it's there. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to leave it there and hope that nothing happens as happened in Princess Street in Batley a few years ago, where the underground coal seam caught fire. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that that is going to happen, but I think at the very least we should defer this for, amongst other things, a report on whether that is likely if the coal seam is left as it is. The alternative, of course, is to extract the coal, and because this site is three sides surrounded, on three sides there are houses, that is going to be difficult and cause quite a lot of, well, at the very least, annoyance to residents. So there are two issues there. One, do we leave the coal where it is and grout it so that any voids are dealt with? But it does seem to me there could be an issue, and on which, as I say, we need reassurance about whether it is likely to catch fire. I don't know whether these things can be predicted or not, but I'm sure the people who lived over the site in Batley weren't expecting that to happen. I like Councillor Simpson, I'm concerned about that. This is an allocated site, of course, and the wording, of course, in the local plan document is not as some people have represented it. It doesn't say the access should be off Leakhall Lane. But it does seem to me that it sounds as though an access from there might be better. Other people may comment on that, but at the very least I would like this deferred, because there are issues to which we need some answers. Other members may add things other than the coal, which I've mentioned. I mean, I will sort of put it more formally that I think one of the other reasons should be to see whether a better access can be achieved for this site, which will obviously have to go over third-party land. So there is going to be an issue in relation to that anyway. So I'll leave it at that point, Chair.
Are you
Deferral.
moving deferral?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's obviously not a particularly popular proposal with local residents. We can see that clearly, but that's not a concern for this committee, I would suggest. What our concerns, I believe, will be highway safety. We've heard quite a graphic description of the local network, both from residents and from Councillor Bamford, and its inability to deal adequately with increased traffic. I do find that quite telling. I have worries about the traffic generation and the local network. That's exacerbated by the issues raised through the representative of the Dean Valley Trust, if I got the name correct. It talks about lack of parking within the site and comments that the garages appear to be too small for modern cars, which I can well imagine that local people would feel a need for SUVs, given the climate in the area, and of course a move to electric vehicles. EVs are seen as being larger and heavier than petrol or diesel engines. So that's something which, again, is a concern to me. I am impressed, and I don't usually say this about colleagues, but I am impressed by the statement from Councillor Bamford, which seems to me to be persuasive, clear and well argued. I think he makes very, very valid points. And indeed, to be even-handed and well-balanced, Chairman. I'm impressed by Councillor Simpson's contribution, although it was pretty narrowly defined, but still persuasive about the problems about coal extraction versus non-extraction and potential processing. I would also say that this application is quite different to the earlier one that's been referred to by the applicant. In particular, is significantly increased density, which infers a significant increase in traffic generation. So I do think there are significant material differences, and I would be inclined to argue for refusal, but having listened to Councillor Pinnock, my colleague here, I'm happy to second deferral so that these issues can be more completely addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Any other speakers? Councillor Crowe.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, deferral's been proposed and seconded, but I did want to ask a question about the remediation strategy because there doesn't seem to be a great deal of detail on that. Chair, you were very kind and asked for us to have a definition of what the grouting was, but I'm not aware that there's any calculation of the volume of material that might need to be imported to the site, for example, which would have a material impact on the traffic management. If you're filling a coal mine with liquid grout, we're looking at quite a volume of material, let's put it that way. And I also had concerns about the, shared concerns about the coal extraction and particularly what the purpose of the extraction was. Was it a mining operation, as in the coal was going to be used as a... And I realise this perhaps isn't a planning matter, but it is still a concern that I wanted to voice. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. So that I've got quite a few questions, so if you'll just bear with me. I mean, I suppose the bigger question, first of all, is that when the original local plan was achieved, I guess there could have been mistakes made, and I'm just wondering whether this is one of them, whether planning could have made a mistake in even allocating this plot of land for planning, because it seems then when you delve into the detail of the land, which is the topography and then the high risk, whether it should have been allocated in the first place. But I guess that's yesterday's news. But then looking into certain points that the Coal Authority made in 2.4, where the development is a high risk area. I was just reading a white paper from the Coal Authority from 2012, where it goes into an awful lot of detail about what should happen before any houses are built or planning considerations are made. And I just wondered if we'd even begun to achieve all those items in those documents from the Coal Authority to make any kind of proper decision on moving forward with any development here. I also wanted to, as an extension to that, on the high risk area that the Coal Authority did mention, and you did, I think you said a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, then the change, was it the change the mind, or they came up with a different decision? I'm really interested in what information they received to change their mind from it being a development high risk area to not. So what actually happened there? What process did you go through to change their mind? So the other things is highways. I know that highways in the past have made mistakes as well. Can go into many reasons that I am quite amber as far as the decision-making process on highways on any development like this, with the problems that we've now got in some of our villages. So I'd like to see more detail on the highways risk assessments and also the seam. So they start digging the seam out and then the seam goes on, do they carry on digging the seam out, or do they grout over the top of it? Then it forms another danger as far as it being flammable. So there just doesn't seem enough for the people that could be living here and the residents around it to make any sort of conscious decision that this is the right thing to do. And I've got many other things that I'm questioning and unsure about, and that's why I'd probably move to refuse this planning application. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Sokal.
Thank you, Chair. I've been on the site visit this morning. Yeah. The ward councillor are asking for deferment on this happen for further information, mainly on the coal mine. And Councillor Andrew Pinnick has spoken to defer this, get some more information, especially on the, especially on the coal mine and grouting. But one thing is, if we want to defer this item, we need to specify now. We can't say when the application come back, oh, the still narrow road, still traffic, more traffic, we couldn't, that way we can't defer this item. We need to specify which issue are we going to defer this item now. So I don't think we can do much about the narrow roads around there. There is a development already been. I've seen new housing development there. Those are on the narrow roads. So please, I think the Councillor Andrew Pinnick should make it clear on which issue we have to defer this item. It's no good when we come back, address those issues. We say, oh, no, they haven't addressed those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your comments, members. Thank you also, members of the public, for those comments. So, as we've heard before, an allocated housing site. When it was allocated, there wouldn't have been highly detailed surveys done in terms of intrusive site surveys, but they have done an assessment in terms of land, and they have advised through the local plan that this site is acceptable from a housing perspective. So residential development is acceptable on this site and it is capable of being mitigated. Being in a coal referral area is not unusual, as Victor has stated. It isn't unusual for the area. I understand there are concerns with the technicalities of mitigating the site and either taking the material out or leaving it there, and that is something you are unaware of, and I do hear your concerns. However, from a technical advisor's perspective, it has been assessed from the Coal Authority and environmental health and planning officers, and through a mitigation strategy, that is the normal way that it would be dealt with. So that's that element. But in respect of highways, there has been a safety audit undertaken on the site, and that is quite normal as well. So whilst I do appreciate your concerns and the technical matters that you may wish to receive more information from us, if that's what you wish and that's what you wish to defer it on, then we will go away and find out what we can bring back to the committee next time. But I just wanted to give you assurance that the site can be developed, and mitigation strategy is the way to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more comments before we... No. Sorry. Are there any more comments before we move on?
So if we defer this, and we have 2 points that we are insisting on looking into deeper, which is the highways and the mining, the coal extraction. And it comes back, and again, there's been mitigation done, and we've done what we need to do. I'm still curious whether we, as the committee, have still got the ability, once those two things have been dealt with, that we could still refuse on other grounds, or are we just cancelling out any ability to question it any further if we've just got those two things that we're deferring it on?
You can, as an authority, as the decision makers, make a decision and refuse planning permission on things that you consider it to be deficient in. It could be highway safety, it could be an environmental matter. However, as you've heard from our legal advisor, given the shortfall of housing in the borough, that is a material planning consideration. And so the tilted balance does apply in this case. I hope that answers it, Councillor.
May I just ask something else then on the mitigation as far as that's concerned? So what we're actually saying as a council, if a plot of land is on the cusp of it not being fit for purpose, but by mitigation and conditions, therefore we should pass it because we've got a shortfall of housing in the borough, is that what you're saying?
So what the tilted balance and the MPPF says is that in situations where it's triggered, the presumption is that you will grant applications unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So I think in effect, Councillor, what that's saying to you is that your bar for assessment when you're weighing up the planning balance is that much higher because of that presumption. Does that answer the question?
Well, it's quite vague. I'd need some specifics because it just sounds like the decision could be taken away from us because we've got a shortfall in housing. To me, there's a danger there that planning gets passed because the borough's got a shortfall rather than the residents and the people that might live in those houses that aren't fit for purpose. And I am never, as a committee member here, going to be kowtowed into making a decision because we've got a shortfall in housing when somebody has to live in those houses and the danger that we might have put them in by putting them into a house that should have never been built in the first place.
Can I come in there? It doesn't say that. At the end of the day, we have this committee as a final say. And if we say refuse an application, the applicant has every right to go to appeal. And that's where it lies. Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, I mean, I hear everything and I can understand why people are worried about coal remaining under houses or whatever that, and whatever that might lead to. But I really do feel that I think we should have some assurance from the fact that the Coal Authority have withdrawn their objection to the application, and that one of the conditions that they're asking for is submission of a declaration confirming that the site has been made safe and stable. I mean, I think with that assurance of that declaration, I mean, I think we as a committee can be assured that we won't be putting people into houses that are unsafe.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the avoidance of doubt, the two reasons that I suggested for deferral were the coal issue and the question of whether a better, in other words, safer access for the site was somewhere else. I mean, I kind of answered that myself by saying it requires third-party land, but you know, it's not beyond the wit of people to work that one out. I am a bit worried about this shortage of housing thing, because there has been a lot of discussion in Parliament about this, and I was under the impression that the government was removing targets altogether. So I'm not really very clear as to why this is still around, because that was quite some time ago. But I think we are not saying we're going to refuse this or pass this. Yes, we need more information so that we can make what I hope is a better decision, whatever that happens to be, when we get to it.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. To move things on, you've moved deferral. Councillor Armour seconded deferral. Councillor Thompson has moved refusal, but hasn't got a seconder. So if there's no other proposals, we'll put it to the vote that we defer this for further information on...
Can I just ask, Chair, that we make sure that we're very, very clear on the wording before you vote, so that there is no ambiguity or disagreement later on.
Okay, Councillor Pinnock is concerned about access to the site. Yeah. And the other is
the coal issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you be happy to just give me 2 minutes to consult with the legal officer and the planning officer to make sure that we've got it properly worded? Then I can read it out before you vote, so you're absolutely clear what you vote on. Is that okay?
Councillor Patterson.
I mean, it is about the access issue in terms of, again, for clarity, because, sorry, Councillor Pinnock, but you were saying you were concerned about the access, but you also recognise that it could only be through third-party land. So I can't really quite see how we can put that in as a... Yeah.
Yes, I take your point, and I think that I'm quite prepared to withdraw that. What it is not about is highway conditions in general. I'm not getting drawn into that. It's actually quite difficult sometimes to put in highway reasons for refusal, so I'm steering clear of that. I think the coal issue is one that, if not solved, could cause considerable problems, one way or another.
Can I just bring Chris in?
Yeah, I think just to sort of clarify the point Councillor Pinnock's going on about potentially an access from Leak Hall Lane. I think we've got to remember the proposal before us actually is an access from Cumberworth Lane, and that's the proposal that we're voting on. If the developer can demonstrate that they can provide an appropriate and safe access from there isn't a reason to refuse it on that. And they've decided to come from a different approach to what might have been accepted. I think from the whole traffic generation point, this has all been done in accordance with industry standard practice. The traffic generated by this development won't have a severe impact on the local network. So I think we've just got to be careful that we're looking at what's before us rather than asking to look at something else. We're taking the decision on what's before us rather than perhaps what we'd like to see.
We'll have a 10-minute comfort break. Thank you, members. Although we appear to have... Oh, I thought we'd lost one then. He's just getting a drink of water. Councillor Thompson did ask a question which wasn't answered. So can I bring Victor in to answer that question before we move on?
Thank you, Chair, through you. And yeah, Councillor Thompson's question was about the coal authority's response and what led them to withdraw their objection. Their objection was based on the fact that they hadn't seen a plan that mapped the locations of the 3 mine entries relative to the proposed buildings. That plan was then provided. That clarified that the buildings were not proposed directly above the 3 mine entries within the site, and that's what led the coal authority to withdraw their objection on Monday.
Sheila, do you want to come in now, or shall I ask Councillor Pinnock to?
So we've pulled together this wording from what's been said. Either you can vote on this, or if there's anything to add, please let me know. That consideration of the application be deferred, and that more detail be provided in relation to 1, how much material will be removed from the site, 2, how much material will be imported into the site as grouting or other material, 3, how the above operations would be carried out, 4, how environmental impacts would be mitigated, 5, to provide assurance in respect of the risk associated with combustible material being left on the site.
Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I couldn't have put it better myself, but I would just like to add that in the report that we get, we should have the conditions printed in full, please, so that we can see, particularly the ones relating to the ones that the Coal Authority have kind of engineered, if you like, what exactly it says in the conditions. It is a pity, to save paper, I know, that we don't get that. You know, we can't see what the exact wording is, because sometimes it's crucial. So I'd like that. Yes.
Can I clarify that, please, Councillor Pinnock? Conditions in regard to these 2 matters, or for the whole of the development?
Well, oh dear, no. Well, I would prefer them all to be there, to be perfectly honest, because there are some relationships between conditions that sometimes you don't immediately consider when, even though they appear to be about something else, they all obviously relate. So,
okay.
Sorry, I'm confusing it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that in mind, and the points that's been read out for Sheila, it has been moved and seconded for deferral. Can we now go to the vote, please? Councillor Sokal.
Against, Chair.
Against, Chair.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock.
For.
For.
4.
That's carried, Chair.
Okay. Do you not hear that? Sorry about that. We'll start again. Okay, we now move on to application 2023/93503, development of 82 dwellings and associated works with layout and access considerations, land off Rosalind Avenue, Netherton, Huddersfield. Nick? Certainly I'll rush through that.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
My name is Nick Hurst, Case Officer for this application. The proposal before members seeks outline planning and permission for the erection of 82 dwellings with associated works. The layout and access arrangements of the proposal have been applied for and are therefore for consideration at this time. The matters of appearance, scale and landscaping are reserved for a subsequent reserve matters application. So the site is greenfield land and has previously been used for agricultural purposes. To the east is the settlement of Netherton, and to the west is South Crossland, which is a conservation area. Vehicle access into the site would be via Roslyn Avenue, which connects to Meltham Road via Henry Frederick Avenue or Chapel Street. This image shows some relevant planning indicators for the area. As denoted by the orange coloration, the site is a housing allocation in the Kirklees local plan. Deanwood to the north is an ancient woodland, and that is the green hatching you can see to the north. The area within the yellow circle is woodland, but it is not part of the ancient woodland, being a younger area. So it's not within the ancient woodlands defined boundary. The land to the north, west and south of the site is the green belt. That's the unhelpfully other green area. And there is a prow running through the site's southern section that you can just see going towards South Crossland to the west and through the bottom of the site there. And just an aerial image of the site as existing. The site slopes from north to south, with the slope being more prominent in the southern section. So just some images. This image is taken from the access from Roslyn Avenue, looking left into the site, or south. Same location, just looking north and just showing the relationship with the properties to the side. This image is taken on the opposite side, so you can see the access from Roslyn Avenue there, and again, just to show you what it's like looking towards Netherton from within the site, with my back to the immediate west boundary there. And here is in the bottom southeast corner. I'll just flick back. So that's down in this location here, if you can see. Yeah, that's taken down here, just where the prow starts. And again, you can see that steeper southern portion, as I was saying. So the image before you shows the access and layout arrangements of the proposal. As noted earlier, layout and access are considerations for this part of the application. The new estate road would consist of a central loop with branching cul-de-sacs, with dwellings arrayed around it in a typical fashion, with there being a mixture of detached, semi-detached and terrace units. A small number of apartments and bungalows are also proposed, which will enhance the variety of housing on offer. And just to show, the apartments would be located just where the indicator is there, and 2 bungalows are shown in that section there. A soft landscaping zone is proposed along the western boundary to provide a natural and defendable boundary to the greenbelt to the west, so all the way along there. Just zooming in a little bit to make it a bit clearer for you, this is the northern portion of the site, although please note that the landscaping details are reserved for the subsequent reserve matters application. You would have the 15-metre buffer zone to the ancient woodland here, and you can see there's the woodland that is not part of the ancient woodland, yeah. Now, the buffer zone to the ancient woodland would have an area of public open space and formal connections only up to the site boundary, but connections into the woodland and the neighbouring council-owned open space would be provided to improve connectivity. This is the middle section of the site. And again, while landscaping is a reserve matters, it does demonstrate that adequate space has been provided for tree planting to come forward. And finally, the southern section, which is the main area of the public open space. This includes a play area, the open grassland and the community orchard in the eastern area here. Connections would also be provided onto the southern public right-of-way, heading west towards South Crossland and east into Netherton and Henry Frederick. The appearance and scale of the buildings are reserved matters. However, the applicant has provided indicative sections which demonstrate how the dwellings may appear. These indicative details show that suitably attractive and harmonious designs could be accommodated on the site. There are no concerns that acceptable details of appearance and scale could not be provided at the reserve matters stage, but are subject to that detailed assessment which would follow. So, thank you, Chair. I'll just invite Chris Dowes through you from Highways to comment on the application.
Thanks, Nick. You've covered quite a bit of that, actually. But yeah, as you've seen, access is taken from Roslyn Avenue, which extends into the site. The layout itself is a combination of traditional estate roads with footways to both sides, shared surface streets and private drives. It's in the form of a loop with cul-de-sacs. The layout complies with the Kirklees design guide and it's suitable for adoption. It's been checked by the Section 38 team and it is suitable for adoption. Parking and visitors provision complies with recommended guidance. Similarly with servicing, they've demonstrated that the council's largest waste collection vehicle can access the site and turn within the site. In terms of assessment, in this particular application, we asked the developer to do a bespoke trip rate. Either did a survey of the neighbouring residential estate to get what we thought was a realistic trip rate, which actually turned out to be higher than the trips rate in this particular case. We've applied temporal growth to that, and any committed development distribution was on the basis of the survey that they undertook, and the traffic generated by the development is concluded would have no material impact on the neighbouring highway network. So from highway perspective, the development is considered acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. The report before members outlines officers' full assessment of the proposal. In summary, the proposal seeks residential development of a housing allocation. The proposed number of dwellings represents a development density of 29 dwellings per hectare within the identified developable area, which is appropriate for the area. Furthermore, the proposal seeks a housing size mixture in compliance with the Council's Housing Mix SPD. Therefore, the proposal is considered to represent an effective and efficient use of a housing allocation, and the principle of development is considered acceptable. This should also be considered in the context of the Council's lack of a 5-year housing land supply and the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The matter of layout and access have been applied for as part of this application. As set out by Highways, the development would not harm a safe and effective operation of the highway network, and the internal layout of the development is acceptable. The layout of the development is considered attractive and would harmonise well with the established character of Netherton. There are good separation distances to neighbouring properties in excess of those expected by the SPD, and officers hold no concerns over the amenity of existing residents or future occupiers based on the layout details being considered. While appearance, scale and layout and landscaping are reserved matters, officers are satisfied that no fundamental reasons why acceptable details could not be provided in the future time. Due regard has been given to other material planning considerations, including but not limited to drainage and ecology, and found to be acceptable as set out in the report. Furthermore, a full policy compliant set of planning contributions and obligations has been agreed. This includes 16 affordable homes, which are spread out throughout the site, and public open space on the site, as well as financial contributions towards education, ecology and open space. Apologies, not ecology, education, open space and sustainable travel. No ecological contribution is required as full net gain can be provided on site. 69 representations were received during the representation period and are considered and addressed within the report. Officers therefore recommend approval of the application, subject to securing the Section 106 agreement and conditions as set out within the recommendation, as per the minor corrections set out within the update to the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Can I call Heather Peacock?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Heather Peacock and I'm from Save the Trees Kirklees. I object to the residential development in Roslyn Drive on 2 points. One, the deterioration and direct damage from the woods, Dean Woods. The negative effect on biodiversity on a local wildlife site. Ancient woodland is one of the most precious natural habitats, the delicate ecosystems that have evolved over centuries and are home to thousands of species, many of which rely on it for their survival. Dean Wood is regarded as an excellent example of semi-natural ancient woodland. Putting an 82-house residential development within 20 metres of this precious woodland will be a detriment to its finite resource. Ancient woodland, because of its importance, is awarded many protections. Kirklees Council's LP 33 states the council will not grant planning permission for a development which directly or indirectly threatens trees or woodland of a significant amenity. The National Planning Policy Framework states that development resulting in loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats should be refused. The woodland is also afforded a tree preservation order. The various reports on the application make it clear that no trees will be lost in the from the woodland, so there's no direct threat. but in my opinion, putting a residential development next to the wood could damage irreplaceable soils, ground flora and fungi, damage roots, increase levels of light, noise and vibration. Rubbish, domestic pets, invasive plants can all affect the ancient woodland. The building process itself with cement and concrete is so bad for the soil and the toxic for wildlife. With the Kirklees Wildlife Habitat Network next to the development, wildlife can be killed during construction period. With so many people, cars, pets, animals, these animals will move away from the area. Britain is almost one of the most nature depleted countries according to the State of the Nature report. One reason being loss of habitat. The West Yorkshire Back Group has too expressed concern for putting housing in this area. On the head of the Planning and Development's report, it says in regards to the ancient woodland, it must be acknowledged that a degree of harm would be inevitable through introducing more people to the vicinity. On this recognition alone, the application should be rejected and we can't mitigate damage to an ancient woodland. It is an irreplaceable resource. Cool.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee for your time today and officers who have worked with us to reach this recommendation for approval. I'm here today on behalf of Johnson Moat Planning, speaking as a planning agent in support of this application. We're very familiar with the site and have been involved with it over the past 6 years, which involved the local plan examination and 2 pre-applications prior to the submission of this outline application. It's an allocated site. Clearly, the principle of development is accepted in the local plan, and the proposals would assist in meeting the council's housing targets during an identified period of housing need. The outline application is for 82 dwellings with detailed matters of layout and access for consideration only at this stage. We're well aware of the site's constraints identified through the community consultation, pre-application and local plan examination. We're grateful for the feedback received throughout the application to ensure a deliverable and well-designed scheme could be achieved. The benefit to including layout as a consideration at this stage allows us to present a scheme which responds positively to the site-specific considerations set out within the local plan text, whilst also reserving the scale and appearance of the product on site to be agreed with the future developer. Your approval today would fix this layout into the outline decision. Through following the guidance of the Kirklees supplementary plan documents, the proposals have sought to deliver a high-quality layout consisting of landscape buffers, tree-lined streets and a housing mix which comprises a mix of dwellings, including bungalows. A landscape buffer is provided to the western greenbelt edge and a 20-metre landscape buffer is provided to the north of the site, allowing appropriate offset to the existing woodland. This complies with the site-specific policy requirement. Drainage investigation identified that infiltration would not be suitable on the site and level differences would prohibit discharge of surface water to a northern watercourse without a pumped solution. To avoid this, the applicant has been able to demonstrate that surface water can be discharged via gravity to the public combined sewer on Meltham Road following attenuation in an underground tank which will discharge at a rate which is 46% less than the existing greenfield runoff. This is supported by the lead local flood authority and secured through the Section 106 agreement. A road safety audit has been undertaken and is now with the council, concluding that the access point is indeed safe. All dwellings will have a dedicated off-street parking in accordance with the Highways Design Guide, and swept path analysis has been provided which demonstrates acceptable turning arrangements for refuse vehicles. The local highway authority raises no objection to this application. The outline application includes Section 106 contributions which are compliant, including 10% affordable housing, an agreed 10-year split and biodiversity net gain to be achieved on site. With all of this taken into account, I'm here to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Sam. Would you, anybody?
Through you, Chair. Yes, so there is an ancient woodland to the north, and as raised, these are irreplaceable habitats. They've been around for a very long time, and it's not like you can particularly replant them and get them to come back anytime soon. Harm is separated into the 2 identified elements of direct and indirect. So in terms of direct harm, the scheme is looking to avoid that by having that buffer zone. national guidance is a 15-metre buffer zone, which this proposal has. There's a 15-metre buffer zone up to the road. We then also have a 20-metre buffer zone up to the houses, which have more extensive foundations, so we do have a bit of an extra buffer zone than that. I would also point out that this site is lower than the woodland, so the water drainage table will go down into the site. We are not denying the surfacing will not prevent water discharging into the woodland. In terms of indirect harm, if you're putting houses next to it, people may go into the woodland. That has to be acknowledged. But this woodland is already accessed by members of the public. It's accessible through various routes and it has public rights of way through it. So we cannot prevent people going into the woodland, and people going into it has the potential to increase that. Given the number of people in the surrounding area, say a 1 kilometre or 2 kilometre area, there will be a substantial number of dwellings and residents already going through this woodland. So the increase of residents going through it will be nominal at best. We will be getting a construction environmental management plan that will look to ensure that animals are protected and other protected species throughout the construction period. So overall, the council's ecologists, the council's arboriculturists are both happy that there will be no direct harm caused and indirect harm has been mitigated as far as possible. There will also be the net gain provisions on site that will enhance the habitat of this site, which you must remember is a field. It's an agricultural field. It's a very limited very limited ecological value at the moment, so we would be getting that benefit there. And we are also looking as part of the development to include boards on the access into the woodland that explain to residents going into it why it's special, what to avoid, that kind of thing. So you're looking to minimise that harm as much as possible, but acknowledge there will be an increase, but it is nominal. And going back to that tilted balance, the harm is limited compared to the various benefits of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for a comprehensive answer. Members.
Chair, I believe the developer has done a good job by submitting this application, and even developer have consulted the local public, public engagement consultation, which is sent out 368 letters out, but although the responses were back only very poor, only 9 responses, but 9 of them, 5 or 6 have made only comment, no objection. I believe it's a good mixture of housing and good contribution, section 106 mentioning, and I'm looking there, no objection at all from the statutory or non-statutory bodies. So I'm happy to move this application.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. You've moved it. Councillor Crook.
Just to reiterate what Councillor Sokol said and to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Pattison.
I just wanted to again agree with you, but I mean, Nick's recommendations about the Dean Wood were excellent. I mean, and I can confirm that wood is well used by local people. They mainly come from, well, walk all the way through it. They come from one end and walk to the other. But yes, it's very well used. And I do feel that there is some access from the site into Dean's Wood. But I mean, at the moment, there will be, from that field, unlimited access almost, just jumping over the fence. So, and I do agree with Councillor Sokol that the developer has obviously mitigated things. I think it's it's only here for outline. I think it is a very good, outline and access. I do think and layout, sorry, and the layout does look excellent, and I think it is a very good use for this site. Thank you. And it's already been seconded. So
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question really reference to the planning officers. I'm just looking at section 12 conditions, and we've got another 32 conditions. So there just seems to be an ever increasing scale of conditions putting into these planning applications, and just wondered if we're confident in planning with the depleted team and quite a new members of the team, that we're confident that we can make sure that these conditions are fulfilled as far as these planning applications with the nature of the ever-increasing number. Thank you, Chair.
Nick?
Through you, Chair, I think I might have to defer to David as team leader on that one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, thanks for your concern, Councillor Thompson. A great number of conditions on a paper, on a recommendation, doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't got enough information. It's kind of the scale of the development, and when you get into 50 houses, 80 houses, and commercial schemes as well that are significant in nature. When a reserve matters application comes in, we need to ensure that if we're granting approval at outline stage, that the required information that we need for that development to come in is all down there initially. So we will then discharge the conditions at a later stage if the information comes in through the discharge of conditions process. So the fact that there's a lot on there doesn't mean that we haven't considered anything. And we will diligently process them as best we can. Thank you.
Are there any more comments? If not, this has been moved and seconded to accept the officer recommendation. I'll start with Councillor Sokal.
Can I just clarify, there was a slight amendment in the planning update, so you're voting on...
Could you read the amendment out, please?
Yeah, it was the officer recommendation to paragraph 6 of the section 106 agreement was reworded to say footpath, maintenance of public access to new link footpaths in perpetuity.
So the proposal is to include that minor amendment. So Councillor Sokal.
Four. Four.
Councillor Pinnock?
4.
4. 4. And 4. That's unanimous, Sheila.